We'll get started with the second talk. Then there'll be a transition period of just 5 minutes like we have between this talk and the first one. And then after the third talk, we're going to have a 10-minute break. So there'll be plenty of time for you to grab a refreshment or take a trip to the restrooms. So my name is Jason Howlett. And in this talk, I'm going to focus on brain performance. And we're going to look at the factors that impact our brain performance and also how we can very easily measure some of these factors with simple wearables. So first of all, what is brain performance? Brain performance is looking at all the different functions in the brain and seeing, okay, what are the things that support those functions and what are the things that inhibit it? And the brain is such a huge complex organ, the most complex organ in the body. And at a very fundamental level, the brain, of course, keeps us alive. But we can look at these functions at all different levels. And today we're going to focus on a subset of these functions, which are called cognitive or executive functions. And we are really simplifying things here, right? So we're trying to create a model that's a little bit easier for us to learn about the brain. So these cognitive or executive functions basically help us to get stuff done. They're extremely important for us to plan things, to solve problems, to make decisions. They're very important for our self-control. So if someone says something to you and really triggers you, instead of hitting them in the face, you have the ability to think to yourself, well, maybe I should seek to find out what they mean before I lose control. So self-control is a really important function that we have, but we also have the ability to learn. So you've already heard the first talk, you hear my talk, you're going to hear another 3 afterwards. All of this information coming into your brain, of course, is going into your short-term memory, and while you sleep, that information will then go to your long-term memory, and it'll be stored, and you'll start to hopefully learn at least 1 or 2 things from today. But all of these different functions can help you to achieve the outcomes you want. So they could be higher-level competencies. So it could be that you're studying at university, and you're studying about creativity. It could be that you're at work, you're becoming a leader, and you want to learn leadership competencies. All the executive functions can come together to help you to learn things from creating a strategy to being able to just learn how to get from destination A to B, or as simple as giving and receiving feedback. So we need these executive functions every single day to be able to perform, to be at our best. And the key thing here is that these functions aren't just there infinitely. We need to ensure there are factors in place to fully switch on our executive functions because they're super energy hungry, one of the most energy hungry parts of our whole body. So what can we actually do to ensure that we have these fully switched on? Well, first of all, we have our physical needs, right? We all know about these. It's super simple. Sleep, rest, fuel, move. Sleep's number 1. So going back to the learning, if you don't get a good night's sleep, you can lose up to 40% of what you've just consumed during the day in terms of information. So that when you wake up the next day, it's like, you've been working on your computer all day, computer crashes without you saving the document. It's the same. If you've been learning something all day, you go to bed, you have a really poor night's sleep, you're going to retain a very small percentage of what you've been learning all day. That's one example of how sleep impacts learning, but sleep impacts basically every cognitive function that we have. Another example is movement. We all know it's important to move, but in addition to the simple case that movement increases blood flow to the brain, which increases the distribution of oxygen, of nutrients, of neurotransmitters, in addition to that, regular movement helps the brain develop, and it also helps the brain to change, which is really key, going back to what Morten was saying in terms of changing habits. Your brain is actually plastic, and the regular movement helps the brain to become even more plastic, i.e. meaning that it's easier to break down old pathways in the brain, old habits, and build new pathways, new habits. So you actually do reach for the skin lotion, and you actually follow that through so that becomes subconscious over time. In addition to the physical needs, we also have social needs. So social needs are very simple as well. It's the ability to be in an environment where you feel safe. So hopefully all of you right now are not constantly looking over your shoulder, worrying if someone's going to burst through the door with a gun or you're going to get robbed here. It's very important that we feel safe. It's also very important that within the group we're in or the team we're in, that we also feel we have a sense of belonging, that people respect us, they give us recognition, and that we feel we have a sense of autonomy, i.e. we have a sense of control, we can voice our opinions, and so on. These are really key things for us to ensure that our executive functions are in place. So to really make sure that we can use the cognitive and the executive functions whenever we need them, these factors down below will play a big impact in ensuring that. But what happens if we lack them? What happens if we do not have these factors in place? From a physical side, I mean, we all do it. I mean, it's Saturday. We're probably all going to do these things today anyway. But, I mean, not getting good sleep, basically, of course, today we won't have back-to-back meetings, but having a session where you're not getting much rest, or things like alcohol and so on, are things that are essentially going to mean your physical needs are not getting met. Being in an environment where you don't feel safe. It could be that you're in a corporation that has a zero-failure culture, or it could be you have a boss that is really aggressive. That situation, of course, means that your social needs will not be met. And the key of pointing this out is that what happens when your physical needs or your social needs, or even both, are not met, is that your brain is triggered into a state where it's essentially in a threat. It launches a threat reaction, right? Your stress response. So you want to fight, you want to flee, or you freeze. You don't know what to do. In that state, the brain puts you in a position where you basically do not give a shit about anyone else. You just care about me, my survival. And that means that because you just want to survive, your executive functions go offline. So all the functions we looked at before with the planning, self-control, making decisions, solving problems, forget about it. Your self-control is out the window. Yeah? I mean, we all do this from now on, and we think afterwards, why did I do that? Well, basically your executive brain was offline, your more primitive brain come in, the subconscious part, and just tore the place apart, and then you woke up and realized, wow, who wrecked my apartment? But the case being that really you did, your executive brain was just offline. The other case is the fact that when you don't look after these needs, your ability to think, plan, solve problems, make decisions is also offline. So you become much more primitive. So there are a lot of events that go on day to day that are obviously causing this situation. As I said, people shouting at us, someone telling us our work wasn't good enough when we spent a lot of time doing it, etc., etc. What we work to do is to help people to measure their behavior on an ongoing basis so that they can find the different events, people, or situations that cause them stress, but also the situations that promote recovery. So it's very easy to measure this using simple wearables. So here we see two devices from Garmin. They measure stress 24/7. There are a lot of devices you can use right now throughout the day to measure stress. And the useful thing about that is not just, again, looking at it from a negative perspective, because no one wants to focus on stress. We want to manage it, but what do we want to focus on? We want to focus on being at our best. We want to focus on ensuring that we can, when necessary, maybe not Saturday night, but when necessary, we do the things that will help us to be fully switched on here so that we can perform. So we have two example graphs here. The key is just look at the trends. So those at the back, don't worry if you cannot see all the details. But basically, like if we take these Garmin devices as an example, they measure you 24/7, and they will then give you a graph based on your stress recovery balance. So blue is recovery, orange is stress. And for the sake of this 10-minute talk, we'll just focus on the period of time before sleep. So in this 24-hour period, where we see, so the time is the x-axis, the stress score is the y-axis, so we have a stress score from 0 to 100, 100 being max stress. Just before bed for this person, so we have sleep. You won't be able to see this at the back, but there's 3 Zs here. And if you want to see this in more detail, Morten Lauritsen, who's standing over there to my left, is going to be demonstrating this in a demo station over there. But basically, even though this person has quite a lot of stress throughout the day, they get a lot of recovery just before sleep. And what we can see through a lot of scientific evidence is the 1-hour window before sleep is critical in impacting how well you recover. So let's take a very simple example of being on your computer or on your phone right up until bed. Most devices, unless you use things to switch it off, emit blue light via the screen. And that blue light hampers the production of melatonin in your pineal gland in your brain. Melatonin is the rest and recovery hormone. So if you hamper its production, what's going to happen is you're not going to get as good quality rest and recovery. So just by switching out that behavior for a simple behavior like reading a book, i.e. again on a device that doesn't have blue light, like a Kindle that's backlit or just a normal book, by doing that, you're not getting the stress while you're on the device, but you're also not getting the stress while you sleep. Because as we see here, if this person was reading a book, their sleep, they get nice blue recovery. Here, the person before bed is on the computer, high stress before, but not just before, during the sleep, their stress is increased because the melatonin production is reduced. Not just that, of course, being on a computer will activate and stress your brain in other ways. So the point being here is that there are a lot of things that generally impact us all, but it's about making it individual. What are your individual gainers and drainers? Right? So a lot of people come to us and say, before sleep, the best thing for me to do is to watch TV. No. 9 times out of 10, that is not helping you to recover. Number 2, I just like to have a glass or 2 of wine. No. Wine, I mean, it's not to say not to drink. We're trying to make this livable, right? But when you really need to be at your best the next day, to be present with your family, to be really on the ball for a budget meeting, whatever it is, what happens with alcohol is about 2 to 3 hours after the first unit, your recovery is reduced, and during sleep, it wipes out your REM sleep, which is where you get a lot of the psychological recovery. So, you know, alcohol may feel relaxing at the time, but it's not going to help you to sleep better. It actually stops you from getting deep wave sleep. So what we try and do by using these devices is really make it individual, right? Because seeing is believing. When you see your data, you see, okay, when I do X, I get Y. So I get my own cause and effect. I learn what my gainers are and what my drainers are. So I know for myself, the best thing for me, if I'm at work and things are really stressful, is just to spend 5 minutes doing a breathing exercise. That really works for me. Or to go and find a colleague that I really get energized by and spend some time with them. So that's something that works for me. But it's about finding what works for you so that you can identify what we call effective behaviors. So it's like the action that Morten mentioned. You've got your trigger, you've got your reward, but then you've got the action in the middle, the behavior that you want to start to turn into a habit. Because a lot of times what we find here is the things people are doing, they didn't know it benefited them or caused the problem. But this helps you to find the right habit to change. Because it's your data, it's something that you're experiencing. So the one issue that we found with, let's go back a step, with doing the data monitoring a device like this is that it takes you to take time to look at your data. It takes time to look at, okay, where are my gainers and drainers? What do they mean? And the second issue is context, right? Not everyone knows what impacts sleep. Not everyone knows how to get good recovery throughout the day. So what we build is an app that automates this. The app pulls in all your data from your wearable, and it also pulls in data from your calendar and sends you notifications on what are your gainers and drainers for the week. So what are the things you did that really increased your stress? What are the things you did that promoted your recovery? So what were they? And most importantly, we use that to help people to set very small milestones on the actions, the behaviors to turn into habits, because they're the things that will help them to fully switch on their brain, to be able to be at their best when they need to be at their best. Thank you for listening.